Good.
It's all short. I got it actually kind of a while ago. Um, it's been a while since we've chatted. I got it maybe a month or two ago.
Yeah, for the past roughly 3 weeks, I've been working every day because Annie had a seizure, so I haven't really been able to do a whole lot outside of work. She's doing good now, though.
That's good. Good to hear that she's doing well.
And we just went and saw a re-showing of Coraline today.
I've heard so much about that movie, but I've never seen it.
It is a phenomenal movie. There's a lot of weird little touches that on a cake when it says like welcome home, if you look at the O in home, there's two loops in it when it's cursive, and that's supposed to mean like it's a lie, right? Like there's all these little things peppered throughout the movie that are really nice when you actually know how to pick up on them. But
And
it's
that's
actually like a genuinely unnerving horror movie, and it was made for kids. It's really good.
that's actually super cool because it's clay animation. So it's like each little Easter egg was like put there on purpose, right? It
And
wasn't like
Coraline, that movie set the standard for cloth in stop motion animation for a long time because they were the first ones to try to make really flowy cloth. They would do stuff with hair that they didn't like to do in stop motion, like having it move in wind or like flip upside down. It was they at the theater they had a preamble that was with the costume design people who explained how all that worked, and they showed all like the little rigs and everything. It took 3 months for every doll they had to make for that show. It took 10 people 3 months to make each one. There was a lot of work that went into it, but Leica makes really good movies.
yeah, I mean it looks good. I'll probably check it out one of these days. I actually haven't. I was just talking. I was driving Lyft today, and
All right.
I was talking to a one of my passengers, and I came to the realization that I think I've only seen like one movie this entire year, and it wasn't even in the theaters. It was like on Netflix.
What'd you watch?
Um, I'm pretty sure the only movie I've seen this year was the Pinocchio with Guillermo del Toro on Netflix.
I don't think I've seen that.
It's
Do
actually
they
really
actually
good.
go? Do they, knowing Guillermo del Toro, do they go with the original ending for Pinocchio, or do they use the Disney version?
Well, what's the original ending of Pinocchio?
Oh, it's okay. So in the end of Pinocchio, a fox and a cat come up to him and they say like, "You have 5 gold coins. If you bury those in the woods, it'll turn into 2,500." And they go to rob him. And Pinocchio puts up a fight and bites off the cat's paw, so they decide they're going to hang him.
Oh,
And his
damn.
last thoughts are that his dad, Geppetto, would be really disappointed in him. And that's how it ends. And apparently, the guy who wrote the books hates kids. So he really delighted in writing that ending, and his publishers told him, like, you need to change that. So he had to write like a nicer version for the American audience because the Brothers Grimm were German, and they love a weird, horrifying ending to a story.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, no, it doesn't end like that. But it has a good
Guillermo del
ending, and
Toro has a streak like that.
it's it is the best rendition of Pinocchio, um, by far. So I
Was he the one
recommend
that
it.
made Was he the one that made Pan's Labyrinth? The one with the pale dude with the eyes in his hands?
Hmm, I'm
That's
looking it
the
up.
image everybody remembers from it. He was called the Pale Man. The Pale Man with he would always sit. He looked emaciated, but he would always sit in front of a table covered in food to like lure kids in because he would eat children. But he had to like look through the eyes in his palms because he didn't have eyes in his face. It's a nice little bit of lore from that movie that I always thought was really interesting. I've never seen the movie. I think it's all in Spanish, but it's just something I always thought was really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess he was part. Yeah, he was part of Labyrinth. I
Yeah,
didn't.
he makes some really wonderful films and some really dark movies, which I appreciate. I like a good dark film. Like my favorite movie, at least currently, is Midsummer, and
Oh,
that's a
that is a dark one.
fucked up movie.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
great movie.
wild.
The second watch isn't scary. It's really sad. Like if you watch it a second time, it's really sad because you know everything bad that's going to happen, and then you start to notice like when they're carrying Danny on the platform. If you look at the trees behind her, it's her sister's face with the thing taped to it. Like there's all these weird little things you notice. Like when they dose Christian at the end, if you look real close, you can see that Pele is staring at him through the slats in the boards in the shack. Like
Oh,
because he set it all up. Like it's really good. Annie couldn't
yeah.
finish it, and I don't blame her. That's a hard watch.
Oh, for sure.
But like I the only reason she was even watching it with me is I was always told like watch it with no expectations. Don't read anything about it. Don't look up anything. You have to watch it flat. So it's like, hey, I've heard this movie's great. You should watch it with me. And I knew that we were gonna have a very different experience when they got to the Autostupa scene where the old people were jumping off the cliff because I was like, oh shit, I can't believe they showed that. And I looked over at Annie and she was in tears. She was like, why the fuck would you show me this? I was like, oh God, I didn't know it was going to be like this. But
Yeah, it's,
like at the very beginning of the movie, they show you that big tapestry that lays out the entire film. That's the whole story in that tapestry. If once you see it the second time, you recognize it. There's a lot of cool shit like that. I love Ari Aster's movies, like Hereditary. Great film.
yeah. You know
I
the
haven't
I
seen the new one yet though. Beau is Afraid. I haven't seen that yet, but I want to.
didn't so he also did didn't he also do it's
There's something strange
A24.
about the Johnsons. He did that.
Oh, it came out this year. Am I
Yeah, that was
thinking of a
Beau's Afraid. I haven't
Beau's
gotten to see
Afraid?
that yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix is in that.
Yeah, that looks really
That
I almost
movie.
saw it, but
So
haven't
the
seen it
thing
yet.
about that movie, like I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard a lot of it's very divisive. So like in the theaters, people would record their reactions, and they would be sitting with their friend, and they'd be like, "Wow, the movie was amazing," and their friend would be next to them going, "This is a fucking career ender." Like it's so divisive with people because it's a 3 hour movie. And the best description I found for it is Ari Aster tricked Americans into watching 3 hours of French cinema. Which, if you know anything about French cinema, it's an entire world of its own. But I really want to watch it. I just haven't like found the time or the money for that matter.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it
I
to come
just
out on like HBO or something.
I just rewatched Joker recently. God, such a I thought that movie was going to be awful. Like I went into it hating the idea of it because like if you're big into the like Batman story, Joker doesn't have a backstory. Like this year, they released his real name, and he's never had one before. He doesn't know his own backstory. Like I think it was at the end of the what was it, the Killing Joke, where he's like gives his story, and then he goes like, or maybe not. I don't even know. I could be lying. Like that was the whole thing, and then I was like, "This is supposed to be the origin story of the Joker. This is going to be dog shit," and it made me really mad. And then I watched it, and it was phenomenal. It
Yeah,
was
dude, it's
really good.
I
Nobody could have played that
yeah.
part but Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was
He's a
fantastic.
character actor. Do you see he's going to be playing Napoleon?
Oh, that would be. Oh, I'm sick. Yeah, dude, I'm
I
so
just
pumped.
saw the banner for that at the movie theater today. I was like, God damn, I know that face. And then I saw Joaquin Phoenix. I was like, holy shit, Joaquin
Yeah,
Phoenix
dude.
is going to play Napoleon. That's going to be great. He's so intense.
He's such a good
Like I
actor.
love him in roles like that. I love him in roles where he's really intense or he's like a villain. Like there was a movie he was in where he was like a serial killer once that was really it might have been Clay Pigeons. It was really good. His really intense roles are always his best because he really knows how to get into that. Man, like Cinema Therapy did a breakdown on Joker actually talking about like the different kinds of things that could be wrong with him to like because one of the Cinema Therapy is if you don't watch them, Alan Seawright, who is a director, and Jonathan Decker, who's a licensed therapist. So they'll watch clips from the movies and they'll try to break down the characters themselves. They do it on heroes and villains, and then they go like, "Here's my diagnosis of what I think could be wrong with it." And with him, a lot of people said DID, but it turns out that might not be right. It seems like it's manic bipolar 1 because his states don't last weeks or months; they're hours, and they just bounce back and forth. And I thought that was such an interesting way to break it down because normally people just go like, "Well, he's the Joker, so DID because there's two of them." Well, no, there's not. He's just in manic states. I thought that was really cool. But like
Yeah, I can
Joker,
see
if
it.
you pay attention to Joker, like all of that might not have happened except the very end. Like every time there's a clock on screen, it's on the same time. Like the Zazie Beetz' character, she might not have even existed in his apartment building, right? Like
Wow.
everything that happened, all the deaths, everything, all of that could have just been in his mind. That's how it's played out. It's like we don't even know what's real. It was great.
I love that movie, and I loved what I assume it was. I assume it was inspired by Taxi Driver, and Taxi Driver
Maybe.
is a
Taxi Driver was too slow for me. Like I like the synopsis of it, but like trying to get into that movie took way too long. But I
oh
love the
dude.
story of it, and I like how depressing the ending is, where like he doesn't change, and it's all just going to happen again because he refuses to change himself. I like a sad ending, right? Like something that just feels like really depressing. I love an ending like that, and I know that's how that movie ends. But Jesus Christ, the first like hour of that movie is so slow.
Dude, I don't know, man. I was hooked. I was glued to the screen watching it. I love that
I
movie.
might just need to watch it again because like young what's his name? The shit. What's the actor's name?
I'm spacing
The
it
guy who
too.
played the taxi driver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, young him is like the way he acted when he was young, like just doesn't really jive with me very well, I guess. It doesn't really mesh too well with my own sensibilities. So that might be it.
Hmm.
And like just I'm not really sure. Because normally I like movies like that, right? Like the vigilante movies, but I really like that it ended where like the cycle of violence is never gonna end because he won't fix himself. And I really appreciate an ending like that because in those movies, usually the guy like goes out of his way, hurts people, and then he's like a hero. But that's not how it works, right? That's not real life. In real life, somebody who's like that just hurts people, and then they probably keep hurting people because they need help and they won't get it. And I like that it shows it in such a raw kind of way. God damn, what was his name? He was in Cape Fear. I don't know how I don't remember his name.
Here, we're gonna look it up. I'm spacing it too. It's driving me crazy.
I know as soon as you say it, I'll be like, God damn, I can't believe I forgot that. I can't believe I forgot his name.
Robert De Niro.
De Niro, yes.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I knew it was an R word name. You know who else had really, really good, like very serious roles was, wow, that just happened again. The dude from Mrs. Doubtfire.
Robin Williams.
Yes. Have you ever seen any of his serious roles? Like a 1 hour photo?
Yeah, I mean he is a. It's crazy that a lot of like comedic actors are really good serious actors. I think it's because they spend their whole life like pretending that it just
Mhm.
becomes yeah, it just comes natural to them.
Well, Robin Williams had, I don't remember what it was, but he had a manic disorder. And that's why he acted the way he did. He was always so big. And he translated that really well into comedy. That's eventually, I think he was a manic depressive, and that's eventually what led to him killing himself in his later years. But he made 1 hour photo and one other movie that year that were very, very serious, like dark roles. So that he could be like, look, I'm not just a family guy, right? I can do these things. So, like 1 hour photo for people who don't know, in a very short synopsis, follows this guy called Cy, who is played by Robin Williams, who lives vicariously through the photos that people bring in from a very specific family that he likes. because he lives alone. He lives a very like sanitized life. And he starts to realize that these people's lives aren't what he thought. Because in photos, you always show your best. But he finds photos of them like cheating on each other, and he decides to bring it up to both of them, and they don't do anything about it, and it just makes him crazy because he's like a stalker. It's such a good fucking movie. It's really good, and a lot of people haven't watched it yet because they're like Robin Williams. This movie, this isn't going to be good because he's supposed to be funny. No, it's great. I love that movie. When I was a kid, I watched it too young. In that scene where he puts his hands over his eyes and like blood shoots out of it, that like stuck with me for some reason for a really long time. Wow, it was a good film.
I remember.
I just like movies. Like I've been watching Black Mirror lately. Ooh.
Oh, dude.
Do you remember 15 Million Merits? Do you remember which episode that is?
Uh-uh.
It was from the first season. It's the second episode. The guy from like Get Out, Us, Nope, the dude, the main character in all those movies. He is in this like dystopian universe where everybody has to pedal on bikes to make power, to make money
Oh.
every day.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Okay.
like,
Yep.
yeah, that was so fucking depressing. Holy shit. Do you remember how it ended?
No.
He uses 15 million that he has that came from his dead brother to help this girl get onto like this reality show where you can try out to be like a singer or like an act, right? And she goes on and he pays all this money. She gets on there and she is an amazing singer. But there's a guy who runs the porn channels and he says like, I could use you because we have too many singers. We just give you all these drugs so you don't even really know what's happening. You'll not even remember it. And she accepts it. And he loves that. So he like it like tortures him that he can't skip the ads that she's in because he spent all his money. So he
Oh,
works
wow.
for like a year to pound out 15 million more so that he can go on the show with a piece of glass and like threaten to kill himself and make this big speech about how they don't give a fuck about any of the poor people on the bikes. And the dude who runs the reality channel is like, hey, everybody has their price. You can make speeches like that every day. Twice a week, you can stream for an hour on my channel, and I'll pay you this much money. And you'll never have to be on a bike again. Do you accept? And he accepted it. He keeps that same piece of glass in a case every day. And he takes it out, sticks it up to his neck, and he's like, I'll just do it. I'll do it right now because they don't give a shit about you. And he just plays it up to the end of the hour, and then he goes, catch me on my stream next week, and puts it away and just stares out at the world alone. And with that ending, it was like he never even saw that girl again. And now he just has to live with himself like that. And it's like everybody has their price. And that dude threw away all of his entire like one of his friends was watching the stream where they offered him that deal and she was like crying because she knew he was gonna take it. And it crushed him that he did. It was so depressing. And I remember I just walked around my house like, oh my God, like for like 10 minutes, just pacing because it was just, it hit so much harder than I thought it would. I thought he was going to go berserk and like kill the dude behind the table or whatever, but he just went a totally different route. But most people, when they think of Black Mirror, they think of the first episode. And you probably remember the first episode where they said, like, if you want the princess back, you have to fuck a pig on live television. The guy
Yep.
who kills himself, like my grandma, when I watched that when it first came out, she was like, that was his dad. Turns out it's not, because if you actually pay attention to the episode, that's the guy that staged the whole kidnapping, cut off his own finger to send them in the mail to make him do it. He's an artist. And he killed
Oh.
himself because that was like, they say that that's like his magnum opus. He'd never be able to do anything better. So he just offed himself. And in the papers that they show at the end, it explains that. But for like years, I would tell that story to people, like explain that episode, and be like, and then his dad sees him on TV, fucking hangs himself because he's so disappointed in his son. But the real like kicker of that story was the guy was willing to do it not to save the princess. He didn't give a shit about that. It was for his political, and that's why his wife won't talk to him after it's all said and done because he goes around, smiles, and shakes hands because he's like, yeah, I saved her, I did it, that was me. It was my political career. If I wasn't in power, she'd be dead. And he uses that to keep his power. And that's like the real crux of the whole episode is like he's such a scumbag that he literally would do anything for his like vain sense of like superiority. It when I started reading synopses of it and I realized that that was the message, I watched it again because normally that episode is boring, but I watched it again with that in mind, and it was a whole different watch. Man, like that show is so good. I've
Yeah.
been like I think the third episode is the one where they've all got the implants so they can remember everything, and the guy like uses it to slowly realize that like his son isn't even his, and his wife's been cheating on him with her friend for like years. Like that one's just sad. White Bear
Wh-
was good too.
Oh, for sure. What did you think of like the last season with Miley Cyrus?
I haven't gotten quite that far yet. I'm rewatching from the top because it's been a long time. Do you remember White Bear? Do you remember which one that is?
Is that the bear running for office or
No. That's the one I'm on now. That one's called the Waldo moment. No, so
yeah.
White Bear is this black lady wakes up in an apartment, doesn't know what's going on, but she finds a picture of her and a dude and a little girl. And everywhere she goes, people just have their phones out and they're filming her. She walks around. She's like, "What the fuck is wrong with people? Is everybody crazy? Why won't anyone help me? There's people shooting guns at me. What's going on?" And there's this lady who goes, "Hey, everybody went nuts because like this picture popped up on all their screens and it like broke their brains. Don't look at their phone screens because it'll do it to you too." And she goes, "All we have to do is get to this substation down here. It's called White Bear. And if we blow that up, we can save everybody." So she's fighting through all this shit, like almost gets killed a couple of times. And when she gets to the substation, she gets knocked out. She gets tased. And when she wakes up strapped to a chair, and it turns out that she had filmed her boyfriend murdering that little girl. So every fucking day they wipe her memory and make her go through that again. And then they show her the video that she filmed to go, "This is what you did, and this is why you're here. This is why this whole crowd is here watching you, booing you. This is why all those people just followed you with their cell phones." And that episode brings up a solid question. When is it too far? When does punishment go too far? Because does it fit the crime? To erase this person's memory every day and torture them for like 8 hours every day and then just do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Because
there's a
then there comes the question of like when they wipe your mind, are you still the same person? You don't have those memories. We are people made up of our experiences. There's a lot of fun little questions that can come from it. Because I knew how it ended, so I felt very conflicted through the whole thing. Because I was like, fuck this lady. She murdered a child, but at the same time, it's horrifying what they do to her. It
yeah.
led to some
There's
fun
a
discussion on Reddit.
there's a thought experiment I heard where like imagine like you're the one who gets to like punish Hitler. Like Hitler goes to hell, and
You're
so
the one with the pineapples, yeah.
you're the one like holding him over the fire, watching him burn alive, and just scream and in agony. And it's like, how long could you do that? And
Yeah, how long could you do that before you started to feel that?
yeah,
Like before it started to affect you? Because everybody thinks when you say Hitler, everybody's like, "I'd do it forever," but everybody's human, right? All right,
yeah,
that's a fun question, especially for me, honestly, because like I'm from Jewish line, like genealogically. I don't practice, but like my grandma still has like Hebrew Torah. Like it's not very far back in my line. So that's a fun question for me to ponder because like it's Hitler. But I know intuitively as a person, like I have empathy. I could only do that for so long before I was like, somebody else needs to take over this one. It's a fun thought experiment, really. It's like Pol Pot. You know, like that is interesting.
yeah. I
It's like
think
the
it's
trolley question on steroids.
yeah. Well, what gets interesting with like my view is that So there's a thought experiment that's sort of similar, but so imagine like it's not Hitler, it's a child
Right.
that didn't do anything wrong. It's just an innocent child. Um, and the suffering, like holding the child over the fire, just like creates another world with like trillions of extremely happy people who just like live in
I've
eternal
heard a
bliss.
similar thing to this, where
So
it's like, where what is it? It's like there's a trillion happy people on a planet, but randomly one of them gets pulled into this world of like permanent suffering, but they know they'll only be there for a short time, and then they can
yeah,
switch back over time. That's what you just reminded me of. But go ahead.
yeah. It's sort of a similar experiment. Yeah, but it's like, should you hold the child over the fire, in order to create? Yeah, should you torture the child in order to create a world of like trillions of extremely happy people who like live in eternal bliss?
That comes down to some very utilitarian calculus.
Yeah,
That's because you know that breaks down like how strong are your morals really? Where do they lie, right? Like, would you be able to do that? Is the strongest question to me. It's like, would you be able to hold that kid over that fire to keep that world going?
yeah. There's kind of two different questions, right? There's like, what is
Yeah.
the right thing to do, and then what is the thing that you could do psychologically?
Yeah, because like there's nothing to say that you like see these trillions of people. You just know that you're torturing a child, an innocent one, but that is no baby Hitler. It's like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's just like a regular old kid. Man, that is interesting because like the right answer to me is like you should, but at the same time, I wouldn't be able to.
yeah. I don't. I think you should. I mean, I'm a pretty much down the line utilitarian, but I may be able to, with just the knowledge that there's a bunch of happy people, but I wouldn't know until I'm actually in the moment.
See
But you,
me, I'm like hyper empathetic. Like I can watch a documentary about like what's his name about like Jeffrey Dahmer and feel bad for him. Like I just because I know like how fucked his childhood was, and
yeah,
it like it wasn't as bad as a lot of them, like Gacy or like Bundy. His childhood was bad for a bunch of reasons, but it's not nearly as bad as it could have been compared to like other serial killers. But I can still be like feel bad for them, and Annie will like watch these movies with me and be like, "How can you possibly feel bad for this fucking monster?" Well, I can imagine if I was in that situation of that kind of pain, like that would really be awful. Like I can empathize with like the worst people, and it's really they're not yeah empathize because I can empathize with the pain, but not like sympathize because I couldn't be one of those people. Yeah, it's just a harder question for me because I don't think I could really do that. So I would rather have it done to me at the end of the day because at least nobody else is getting hurt.
really. Yeah, I definitely don't like the
Well, I mean,
idea.
like I've worked security. Right? Like I was a bouncer in several different bars. My whole job was if anybody's going to get hurt, it's going to be me, so that everybody else can be safe. So like that's just like I'm working on getting my security licensing so I can do that professionally. Like, it's I've always been that kind of person.
Hmm.
I'm empathetic to a genuine fault. I've
Part.
literally given the
Yeah.
shirt off my back to somebody. You know what I
Part.
mean? Like I'm too empathetic for my own good.
Part of it's admirable, and the other part of it's scary, right? It's like,
A little bit. Like I've almost gotten shot like twice working at bars because bikers don't like gay people. So like I've been well, not all of them. That's a very broad generalization, but in Ohio, they have a problem with the gay people, and they will do things. I've almost been winged a couple of times, and it didn't phase me until after everything wore down and the adrenaline wore off. That I was like, "Oh my god, I almost got hit!" But at the same time, I just wanted to make sure everybody was okay. That's just kind of how I am, I guess. So those questions always
Hmm.
come down to like, can I put myself in that position? Because like after a while, pain is pain. It can only get so bad before it goes numb. So I could probably handle that for a while.
That's interesting. Is there do, do you think there's a threshold there? Like do you think it's all you're always gonna try and take on the like would you be
Well,
the
not well, at the time, like there was also somewhat of a self-destructive aspect to that because I felt very alone and I wasn't on my depression medication. I didn't feel that I had people that would care. And now I know that I do, and like I worry about those people. So now it would be a little harder for me to do that because I know that it would hurt the people around me. But at the end of the day, I think I would still go for it. But if I like knew I was going to die, that's a different story now than it was then. Because like I've had clinical depression since I was 8 years old, and now that I've been treated for it, I kind of like have in like a weird macabre kind of way. I have like a will to live now, so I don't think I would so willingly throw myself at death. But like I could get named for somebody, you know. I've already I like the damage I did to my knee, like nothing will amount to that pain in my life. Like I could get gash at my job tomorrow and it still wouldn't be as bad as that was. So I know that I have a really good threshold for pain. I know that really bad pain I can manage pretty well. And you know, if like say my store was getting robbed, somebody walked in, the robber pulled a knife on him, I would rather that I got cut and managed to get that customer out of my store than have that customer end up in scrap and get killed. But like, you know, if it's my life or my customer's life, I only make 11.70 an hour. That's not enough to be a hero. But if all it is some stitches in a hospital room, I can manage that.
hmm interesting. So
When I was in school, I was the break up every fight before the cops get there kind of guy. And I caught a few stray hooks to the jaw. I've taken a few good hits breaking up fights. Just like I didn't mind it because you know I'd rather not have cops get. Yeah, no, I've always been that kind of person.
yeah, I'm thinking because that brings up a lot of different things. Um, so what I worry about is the sort of willingness to feel pain. Um,
I'll avoid it wherever I
I
can, but if it's
okay.
between me or somebody else, I'd rather I handle it than they do because I know I can take it.
Yeah, I get. So this is what scares me because what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm just like totally hearing the wrong thing, but what I'm hearing, and let me know this is like too far or anything, but what I'm hearing
Sure.
is it sounds like you're possibly using this like um this idea of like, oh, I'm taking on their pain like a Christ-like sort of thing as sort of a reason
No,
to
no, no,
maybe feel pain. Um,
no. I avoid pain wherever I can. I can
okay.
handle like really bad pains pretty well, but like little shit really bothers me. Like you know when you like bump into the wall on accident when you're walking past, it kind of hurts. That
Yeah.
bothers me for like 10 or 15 minutes. Like that'll really get to me. But I
Oh man.
know that like I've been cut before, like in at my job. I've broken my leg on my scooter. I had a spiral fracture up my shin and a shattered tibial plateau. Like when you have that kind of injury, what happens is like every time you move your leg, the muscles cramp around the bones. So like it just and it doesn't go away for probably 10 minutes. It's just a solid cramp and there's broken bones. So like having been through that and knowing like I survived that, I'll be fine. Having been cut the way I did and being okay, I know like I'll live. Pain is pain, but I can get
Oh,
through it
okay.
because like a lot of my customers are like older people. The average age in my town is like 72. If that pain happened to somebody that age, they could just die. So like I'm young,
Yeah.
I can handle it. My heart's healthy, I'll be fine. It's not like a savior complex, right? It's not like I'm gonna do this for you, right? It's like if I can manage to get
Oh,
in the way to like stop them from getting hurt and like get people out who don't aren't involved, I'll be fine with that. But it's not
so
like I think I'm fucking Superman. You know what I mean? Like it's not like that.
there may be a misunderstanding here. So my thought was like not so much the savior complex, but like um the the goal isn't the savior complex. The goal of like helping others is to disguise the wanting to feel the pain. Um,
Oh no,
yeah,
no, I
but
hate pain. But like
okay,
it's more just I would rather in like a bad situation where somebody's going to get hurt, I would rather it be me because I know I can handle it. It's not that I
gotcha.
want to. Like if I know the other person will be fine, I'm not jumping. Like if I know that person can handle themselves, I'm not going to put myself in a dangerous situation. But if it looks like they can't, or it looks like something bad is going to happen, I'd rather that it happen. Because at the end of the day, right, like at my job, they're a customer. They came in to get gas. They did not come in expecting to get robbed, right? But I work at a gas station every night. There's a possibility that I will. So it's something I'm already prepared for. You know what
Gotcha.
I mean? Like it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
you just know that you have a higher like pain threshold than a lot of people do,
yeah.
especially like these older gentlemen in your town.
Oh, yeah.
Um, okay, that's that. Yeah, that's brings up another interesting topic. There was, and I always forget the name. But there was a book um written by this. There was it was she was a Holocaust survivor, and she made the claim that um someone getting the wrong colored car could like theoretically experience the same amount of suffering as someone like um
Oh, yeah.
dying in the Holocaust, which is like
That one. So, like, that sounds ridiculous on its face. But that lady, if I remember right, she has a some kind of psych degree. And what she was explaining is like, or no, she doesn't, but I know what she was saying from a psychological standpoint. For some people, like anything can be a crisis. Anything like getting the wrong color car, if you've never had hardship in your life, is the worst thing that could happen to you. But if you've been through the Holocaust, nothing will ever amount to that. It's like it's the difference in people's lives, right? Like I've been through it. There, like I said, I know that I can handle it because I've had the handle. But for some people, like stubbing your toe is excruciating, and for some people, it's a Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, a lot of it
that's
depends on
right.
your mind state as well, right? So like
Yeah,
I know like so we
I can
just took
still hear you when I get up because I've got Bluetooth headphones. I'm just turning on the
okay,
light because
sweet.
it's getting dim
So
outside.
like um in the past when I've like been on shrooms or like psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
um I get
You got to be careful.
so like I get really scared to take my dog out for a walk. Like I get really scared to go
Yeah.
outside, right? Well, it's like that's such
Mm-hmm.
an easy thing to do. You do it all the time. You walk outside, like it's not a big deal. You know, do
Yeah.
it in your pajamas, do it barefoot, do it, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so
I've always wanted to try something like that, but my problem's always been like depression and shrooms don't usually mix really well, and you have to be in a safe place with people you trust. Like it's just too many requirements for me to meet that I know that I'm gonna have a bad time. So I just kind of stay away from
yeah, it's not a my view on psychedelics is you don't do them for fun.
Yeah.
Um yeah, they're educational. You do that. You
See,
do them to
that's why
reflect.
I want to
And
do it. I want to do it once because I want to see what it's like. I want to know what kind of revelation I might have because I know people that it's changed their entire lives. And for some people, like my roommate, my old roommate Gio, he does acid every day and he has a stutter now. Like,
yeah, don't
and
do it
he
every
never
day.
had
No.
before.
You do it like
Yeah,
once or
no,
twice
like,
a year.
yeah, it's like ayahuasca. You should, if you're ever going to do that, you do it once. And that's the only time you do it.
Yeah.
Like, me and Annie have a personal friend who has enough native blood in them that they are legally allowed to use peyote, and they still only do it like once a
Yeah, I get kind of annoyed when people just like do them all the time and like it's like a let's
year. It defeats the
take
purpose.
shrooms and then go to a concert. It's like no, that's not how you do it. Yeah,
No, like take an edible before you go to a concert. Because if you freak out with an edible, it's just because you get anxious. If you freak out when
yeah,
you're on shrooms and you're at a concert, that could be a heart attack.
yeah,
That's like I don't get paranoid with marijuana, so I'm fine with it. But I know a lot of people who are in the same boat with weed who have taken shrooms and have panic attacks. And I feel like a panic attack on a psychedelic is a horrifying possibility.
yeah. You
Like that
have
just
to.
sounds like the worst thing.
That's why you have to really like control your environment because once you're
Yeah.
on the drug, you let it take its toll because
Yeah. Like the only
it's
advice my
taking you
dad
on a
ever
path.
gave me
Yeah,
was if you're going to try drugs, try half. Because if you don't like it, you only have to deal with it for a few hours. But if you take the whole thing and you don't like it, that's an 8 hour ride you can't get off. That's
yeah,
like the other really good advice. Well, people tell me it's good advice is when you first start doing mushrooms, don't look at your hands and don't look in mirrors. Like some people really love to look in the mirror on mushrooms, and some people are like horrified by it because
yeah,
like my friend told me like I like to look at it because it looks like my face is melting, but some people see that and it makes them panic. Don't look
yeah,
in the mirror. Did you when you've seen Midsummer, right?
yeah,
You remember at the beginning when they took the mushrooms, how like the trees looked and everything, like they look like
yeah,
running water? Someone told me that is extremely accurate to mushrooms. Would you agree with that?
yeah. It's pretty accurate.
Nice. It
Yeah.
seems like it could be really calming, but as soon as you start to get anxious, it can turn on you really hard.
In my experience,
Like how like Danny saw everybody like laughing at her even though they weren't. Like it was a whole horrifying trip.
in my experience, I've seen that happen. For me, I've seen that happen more on acid than on shrooms. Um,
I've been told shrooms is usually like colors look a little brighter. They look like big balls of color. Things kind of look a little runny.
yeah,
But acid can like make you see things. Like we had a guy come to the party at our house and he dropped acid and we didn't know. And he was perched up on a toilet because he thought he saw, I don't remember what he said it was, but there was tiny animals like on the tiles in our bathroom. And he was afraid to step down because he thought he would crush them. So he just perched on a toilet for like 2 hours.
yep.
And that just doesn't sound like fun to me. Have you ever heard of Datura?
One more time.
Datura.
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 Uh-uh.
Do you know what Jimson weed looks like? Well, wait,
Nope.
where did you say, what state are you in?
Utah.
Utah, right. Okay, so Jimson weed grows in the south. If you Google it, it's got very pretty looking flowers. They're white and they kind of spiral and they've got pointy tips on them. This shit grows on the side of the road in the south and it has big brown seed pods. Datura is a psychotic, and you use it by crushing up the seeds from those pods and eating them, making them into tea, drinking them, smoking the leaves. But the dose that gets you high is nanograms away from a death, from like a death dose. So like, there's no upside to doing it either. Like even like psychonauts online will be like, don't even bother trying it. Like it's just not worth it. You you lose track of where or who you are for days. You hallucinate things talking to you. You see things, but when you wake up, when you finally come out of it, some people have reported having permanent depression, stutters, speech impediments, like all kinds of horrifying shit. And like kids do it sometimes because they hear you can get high for free. It's just like the nutmeg. You eat enough nutmeg, it'll make you high, and it has the worst hangover of anything that's ever been. And all getting high on nutmeg does is make you anxious. But if you look up like Datura trip stories, they are horrifying, and I don't know why people do them.
Yeah, there's I guess there's a lot going on psychologically for people to do something like that. Like I mean, it's pretty common
A
that
lot
like
of times,
especially
a lot of times there are people who go like, I've tried everything, I might as well try this, and then they absolutely regret it.
yeah, I think a lot of it is like a people who are depressed and they're like don't quite have the guts to go all the way with like a suicide attempt.
Yeah,
So like they try like
they just
I had a
try everything.
yeah, I had a friend who heard you could get high off of Benadryl,
Ooh,
and
this is a dangerous one.
yeah, they took a ton of Benadryl and then had a seizure, and yeah, um,
They probably saw that shit on TikTok because people were talking about that for a while.
yeah. The moral of the story is be careful, respect drugs, and yeah,
Yeah, if it's a prescription, there's a reason there's a dose on it.
exactly.
That's yeah, it's like that's why when you're a kid they tell you don't take somebody else's prescriptions. It's because those prescriptions are tailored to you. Like when I was in school in Texas, you can just carry Adderall. You don't need to carry your prescription with you. It doesn't have to be in the bottle with your name on it. You can just have it. So I would take 40, 50 milligrams of Adderall every day, but I would have to take it with food. So I would have to bring it with me to school. And people found out immediately. And people were offering to buy it off me. And I was like, you don't need this. Otherwise, you have it. And if you take this dose, there's no telling what'll happen to you. It doesn't just make you a little hyper when you don't need it. It's like meth, and it can give you a heart attack. It's horrifying what it can do to you if you don't have ADHD. Because for me, it slows my brain down and it makes me able to focus. For you, it doesn't, and it can cause a ton of problems. Raised blood pressure, aneurysms, all kinds of things can happen if you take, like they call it speed, but all kinds of things can happen if you take stimulant ADHD medication, especially high doses, when you don't need it. And I would try to
Yeah.
explain this to people, and they're like, "Yeah, but it's a study drug." It's like, no, it isn't. It is for me, not for you.
The thing is, you take the common thing is you take Adderall to study for your finals and then end up cleaning the entire
Yeah.
house instead.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you don't need it, you can't focus. Like it just sets your mind ablaze. Like the way I usually think of it is like it lets people know what my brain is like all the time. Like you can't focus on anything. It's just spacey, and then your brain picks one thing to laser focus on, and that's all you've got. And usually for normal people, that is cleaning. But for me, like hyper focus only works on things that cause a dopamine, video games, YouTube, shit like that. So like I don't make enough dopamine, so I don't read my endorphins properly. So like when you wash dishes or clean your house, you get a sense of like satisfaction. I did this.
Mhm.
Look at what I've done. I don't get that. I just feel bored. Like I feel like I've wasted 45 minutes of my day. So it's that's why like ADHD people like stereotypically we live in very dirty rooms, dirty houses. It's because like cleaning is such a hard thing to motivate yourself to do, especially because dopamine is the motivation chemical that you just don't do it until it's like a crisis, and then you just spend all day doing it because at the end of the day you're going to feel bored regardless of how long you do it, and it's really hard to get yourself out of that kind of cycle.
Yeah, that's
And that's
why
part of the reason I want to get
ADHD.
on my meds.
Yeah, I'm team meds. Meds are cool, but it's one of the reasons why uh people with ADHD are so good at procrastinating. They can procrastinate and then write their huge
Get everything done
essay
right at the
the
end.
night
Yeah.
before.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I never wrote a second draft of any essay that I scored high on. I would always just do it once and then hand it in. Like my end of the year school test, I would always score very high, and I would get them done in 45 minutes and just hand them in. And then because I was in the special room, I would usually be in the library with a bunch of kids who were like slow kids, so I would have to stare at books for 8 hours that I wasn't allowed to read while I waited for them to finish their test, like that. Or like, and the way hyperfocus works, usually that meant I would just zero in on the sound of the clock ticking, and it would make the day feel like it took 4 times as long as it does. But like, it's did you know that untreated adult ADHD is considered deadly? I
Whoa,
just
what?
found this out a few months
Yeah,
ago.
what's the reasoning behind it?
Because when you have ADHD regularly, you will forget where you are because your brain just goes off in other directions. So, like, if you're, I don't know, driving, you're just sitting in one spot, holding the accelerator at the same level, especially if you're on the highway. So your mind just starts to float. And you'll kind of forget that you're even driving, and then you'll just fucking rear end somebody, go off the side of a bridge. Like, it's deadly. Like, you forget where you are, you'll
Okay.
end up lost more often, stuff like that. Sometimes, like, say like I'm chopping vegetables, if my I have to focus really hard on that, because if I stop paying attention, I'll cut my fingers because I'll just let my mind kind of wave off somewhere else. Luckily, I find chopping vegetables very engaging because I actually really like to cook. But I know a lot of people who have scars all over their hands from just trying to cook because their minds just wave off in other places and they don't hold their fingers right, so they just cut and then they hit their fingers. Apparently, it's deadly. That's part of the reason it's a disability, I suppose. Like mine, I qualify for disability. It's just disability doesn't pay very much, and it takes 2 years to get on a minimum. So I still work,
That damn work, dude. That's
especially the job
interesting.
I do.
I'm I wonder how, like, just from like a psychiatrist like point of view, how similar ADHD is to um like Alzheimer's or like dementia. Um
Well, I don't know if it's only if you take the meds, but I know with ADHD people, we're at a 20% higher risk of having dementia.
wow. Okay.
I think it's only with the meds because stimulants can cause brain damage over time. But yeah, I'm at a 20% higher risk of having dementia than most people.
Nice, dude. How does it feel?
That's part of the reason. Oh, it feels. I mean, I'm a big proponent for
Wow.
assisted suicide, and that's one of those things that I think you should be able to get it for. Is if you have dementia and you still have your wits about you, and you're like, I don't want to do this, put my family and myself through all the suffering for years until I go. Just let me go on my own terms. That's one of the bigger reasons that I'm a big proponent for it. Is like that's a horrifying thing to have to live through. You should be able to choose that.
I think, yeah, I definitely think we should normalize assisted suicide, especially for like older people. Like I don't think old folk homes should exist. Like that is just like
No,
absurd.
I think that if they do exist, they should be much more well regulated so that there's not such a crisis with like elder abuse in those homes. Part of the reason that that happens is because they're so stretched in. So, like in Florida, for example, there's only required to be one RN at a nursing home. All the rest are CNAs. These are people who took maybe 2 or 3 semesters of courses. And then there is one person with a higher level license who's in charge of all of them.
Yeah, that
Like
is
we we
crazy.
we have a loose family friend named Jomar who has a house that he built that he just keeps people in. Like he just holds on to continuous care patients and just like feeds them, takes care of them there. And as far as I know, Jomar is not a nurse. He probably just has one on staff, but he usually has like 9 or 10 people who live at his house. Like it's wild to me that you're even allowed to do that. For one, because I feel like there should be really high standards for end of life care like that. Like my mom does that now. She does. She works through a company that does hospice care at home. And like, man, some of the living situations that I hear about that these people live in are unreal. Like they should be in a facility. But they get to choose whether or not they go in a facility, and that's their right. But I think a lot of those people would choose to let go on their own terms if they were given the option.
How far would you go with like assisted suicide? So for certain people, would you even give them the option?
I think that terminal illnesses, old age, like severe physical trauma, brain trauma, especially, like anything that's going to really severely hamper your quality of life, like a really bad cancer diagnosis, all kinds of stuff like that, you should be able to opt in for it. Like, usually when I say that, people go, "Oh, you think people with depression should get assisted suicide?" Well, no, you can treat that. But like, I mean, in some cases, if you have medication resistant severe depression and you just will never be able to live a life where you feel fulfilled or happy, you could talk to doctors and make a case for that. But generally, it's for people like a story that always comes to mind is there was a guy in the UK. He was dating a lady who was like nuts, and eventually he left her, and she convinced him to come over to get some stuff, and she was like, "Just stay the night." So he did, and she dumped acid over 85% of his body.
Oh wow.
He was so badly burned that his own father didn't recognize him. It was bad enough that the doctors would not release the photos, which is extremely rare because those photos get released publicly because it's helpful for like medical people and stuff like that. These photos were not allowed to be released, just a diagram of how his body was burned. And because in the UK they didn't have assisted suicide, he was in hospice for 3 months, suffering, blind, couldn't taste, just would never heal. It's impossible to heal from that level of chemical. So his family had to basically kidnap him and bring him to another country in Europe where they did allow assisted suicide so he could finally be allowed to die. That should not happen. He should have had that option immediately. There are a lot of people who are on hospice care that don't want to be, that just want to go. And they can't because for some reason in this country we think it's perfectly fine to let people suffer until they die when we have every kind of harm like painless way to go at our disposal, and we're like, no, let them die, just let them suffer. And it's just horrifying to me that we allow this to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, so I feel like we can point to a lot of like obvious cases. What I'm interested in right now is sort of like like the sideline sort of fringe, like how far would we
Sure.
go? So like I guess so like imagine you're in a nursing home and you see someone with like with Alzheimer's or dementia or something, and they're walking around and you could just tell that they're suffering, but they can't really consent to like um getting like assisted suicide.
That
and
would be
and
a
you
hard line.
and
Like,
you and you had the ability, like I mean you know where all like the cameras are, and like that you wouldn't get caught, like, and you knew that the life would be better if like they're suffering greatly but they can't consent to it. Like would you like euthanize them, sort of like assisted suicide?
euthanasia is a different topic that I'm not entirely, like, I haven't really explored that much because euthanasia is a very slippery slope. Like, it can start out with good intentions and just be used by the worst people for the worst things.
Yeah.
So that's one that I don't think I'd ever be fully on board with. But like, when it
What if
comes down
they're
to like dementia, the way it breaks down is there's 7 stages, but for all intents and purposes, call it 6 because the first stage has no identifiable symptoms. The first, so 2, 3, and 4 are the awareness stages. You are aware that something's wrong. You still know who you are, but your memory's fogged. You start to forget things. You start to forget where you are sometimes. You forget who your family is. Once you hit 5, 6, and 7, those are called post awareness. That's when you start seeing a lot more violent behavior. That's where they stop to remembering who they are at all. They stop talking. the last thing that a dementia patient forgets is their favorite song. So, like, all the way down in those last three stages would be where the question gets interesting, because that falls down to, is it ethical to allow somebody's family member to make that decision, or if they don't have family members, for doctors to make that decision?
Yeah, that's
And
what I was gonna
I
ask.
think
Like, what if their
it,
family?
yeah, I think that if they are incapable of advocating for themselves, that it could fall down to the family, because the family ultimately will know what they want. Now, sometimes family is not the best, so you would want to bring in doctors for that. But largely, I think that once you are essentially like a husk of who you once were, it's time to wrap that up, right? Like, there's no reason to force you to go through this, to put people's families through that, to put them through it. It's just like, have you ever heard of it's called Everything Everywhere at the End of Time?
Mm-mm.
There's a guy in the UK called The Caretaker. He's an experimental musician, and a few years ago he put out a musical collection that he made called Everything Everywhere at the End of Time. And what this is it's through the format of music, like old records. He takes you down the path of all those different stages of dementia. So, like, at stage two, it's just the music's a little foggy. There's some scratches on the record. You can tell there's something wrong, but you don't know what it is. And by the time you get to the last stage, it's almost complete silence, except for these loud clashes of like scary moments of music. And then it just goes silent again. And there's just little pops from the record. That's it. Until eventually they die. That's what happens from second stage to seventh, is you just start slowly losing things. The music gets foggier. The spaces in between the sounds get longer and longer until it's almost everything there is, until eventually there's nothing and you go. And I think that once you're in that point where it's all just fear and anger because you're constantly in fight and flight because you don't know who you are, that's not living anymore. That's not a life. That's just terror for terror's sake. And I think that I would be for the families making a decision at that point, because they're not capable of advocating for themselves. Because the families, once they're at that point, families are allowed to decide on surgeries, blood transfusions, DNR lists, all kinds of things like that. So I think that that should be included as a medical procedure, as sad as that might be.
It sounds kind of gnarly, but I kind of hold the view that we should normalize, like, in the same way that we take our like extremely like sick pets to um to go to doggy heaven, right?
Yeah.
We should do that to grandma too. Um,
Yeah, that's kind
yeah,
of the position that I hold. It's a painless way to go. The best way that we've found, the most humane way anyway, which probably won't be feasible for a long time, but in the time being, is helium. You just kind of tape a bag around somebody's head, you pump helium in it, because your body only trips that you're suffocating. There's like a tripwire in your brain, to make it very simple, that goes off when there's a certain amount of CO2 in your blood. And that's why you panic if you hold your breath for too long, because that's when you start to suffocate. But if you're using helium, your body doesn't have a trip for that. So they'll just kind of, it makes the pain go away. They'll laugh. It makes them feel like euphoric for a little while. And then as all the oxygen is replaced with helium, they slip away. And they don't even know what happens. And that, in a strange way, is beautiful, because that's a much nicer way to go than almost anybody will ever have the chance to have.
yeah. It's like you're allowing the death rather than running away from it, and as your knees are
Yeah,
breaking and your ankles are breaking and you're suffering, right?
yeah.
It's like
As you're
so
like falling apart because your DNA isn't staying together anymore as you get older and older and older.
yeah.
That's why old people's skin sag, their bones start to get brittle. It's because as your DNA replicates, it loses a little bit every time it does it. and you start to lose those collagen bonds as your skin starts to regrow itself as you get older, and like your bones become more brittle because your osteocytes aren't as effective as they used to be. It's an interesting thing to learn through genealogy. Really.
Yeah.
I have
Oh
a
my gosh.
strange set of interests.
Oh, same. Yeah, me too. Like, dude, it's so hilarious. Like, there's been a couple of times, like at the bar, I'm just like super drunk, and I just go up to people. Oh, what do you think about utilitarianism? And they're like, "What the hell is
Yeah,
wrong with this
they're like,
guy?"
"What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, people who aren't politically engaged are like, "Utilitarianism? What the hell are you talking about? I'm just trying to have a beer." And then you find that
Yeah.
one guy who's been waiting for that question.
Yep. And then you just
There's
click.
always one dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always one dude at the bar who's like waiting for somebody to ask him the politics question. He's like off to the races.
Yep.
At my store, I get that a lot. Like people will say something around politics, and I'll be like, "Do you want to have a conversation about that?" And they go, "What do you mean?" And I say, "I can get everything in the store done in an hour and a half. So if you want to have an extended conversation, we can do that. But I'm going to lay it out very bare before we do. This is how my political framework works. I'm a socialist. I am very, very progressive. So we are probably going to argue about something. And I just need you on audio on the cameras to say that you consent to this argument before we have it, so that if you try to call corporate, my ass is covered." And I find out horrible shit people believe. And I've actually helped convince some people away from it. But like some people, like I talked to a guy recently, and I always thought he had Tourette's because he has like a facial tic. So I asked him the other day when he was talking to me if he does, and he looked me in the eyes and he went, "No, I have demons." I was like, "Oh, like metaphorically?" And he goes, "No, like I have real demons inside me." And I was like, "Okay."
Whoa. All
He
right.
goes, he's like, "You know why I do this all the time? It's because I can't even smile. Watch what happens." And he goes, scrunches up his face. And he's like, "See, they won't even let me smile." And he was trying to convince me for like an hour that God was real because he could like speak in tongues, and then a demon would be ejected from his body. And I was like, man, like I know a lot about the guy. He had a horrifyingly traumatic life. Like he had a traumatic upbringing. He went in the military and saw awful things. And instead of dealing with that, he just went deep into evangelicalism. So like he just puts all of that in there, and he doesn't get anything like looked at because he doesn't think he needs to. And it was genuinely, it was really sad to me, but like he just kept getting mad and it was scary. So I just started being like, "Okay, I have to get back to work now." Like, I'll see you
Oh,
later.
hey, how are those demons doing? Here, I can let my
Yeah,
dog
every
out
once in a
real
while
quick.
he'll come back in and do. Yeah,
I'll be. Yep.
I'll just fill the air while you're gone. I work overnight at a gas station, so I do meet plenty of very strange people, and I cannot see the chat at the moment. So if you have any interesting questions for me, let me know. I decided I was going to fill the air. I don't know if there's anybody in the chat, but I posed an option for questions.
Awesome. Yeah, I just let him out of my room. Um,
All right.
I guess there's some
I thought
people in
you
the.
had to like let them outside, and I'm trying to work on not letting there be like empty space. Because when you talk at length in these types of forums, you have to try to fill the air. So I'm trying to work on that. So I figured, what better time than when you have to let your dog out?
Oh, for sure. Here, my
Man.
whenever I move, I have a habit of moving my computer, and whenever I move it, it like disconnects from my audio interface, and it messes up the sound. Um,
Oh, that sucks.
yeah. I just need to stop like moving. First of all, I need to get a new cord, but I also need to like stop touching and like finicking with my computer.
Oh yeah, no, like I part of the reason I have Bluetooth headphones is because if I have wires in my earbuds, I chew on them and I like fuck with them, and I end up exposing the wires and ruining my head.
Yep.
I fidget with everything I can get my hands on. Like I do that so much with this headphone case that there's cracks in the plastic part on the top because I open and close it so much.
As a
When
kid,
I
I
worked
used
at
to.
bars, I used to have the bartender take straws and cut them in half, and I'd have him do it with like 20 of them because I just chew them up through the night. And I asked a new bartender that once, and they're like, "What do you need short straws for?" And I was like, "I'm not doing coke off your bar top. I just need something to chew on." And they were like, "Okay, well, if you go in the bathroom, you leave those straws out here." And I was like, "Look, man, if I was desperate enough to do cocaine off a toilet lid, do you think I would need a straw for that? Like, come on. I
Bro.
don't do coke. I'm just a KJ. I'm just here to like make people sound decent when they come up and do karaoke. I just need something to chew on. And I don't want splinters, so I won't use your toothpicks. Just cut some fucking straws in half for me."
That's awesome.
Oh man, I loved working at bars.
Dude, it's so fun that everyone has these different quirks. Like me, like I get really anxious and annoyed when I hear silence. So that I always have to make noise. So I'm always like
Yeah,
quietly beatboxing to
silence bothers
myself, or
me
just like making
a
sounds, just or just like singing like stupid songs. I do this. I sing like I'll sing like
Have
stupid
you,
like middle
speaking
school
of
like pee
stupid
pee poo
songs,
poo songs.
have you ever heard of the Stupendium?
Uh.
There's a if you use like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, you've probably heard one of their songs where it's the chorus goes, "We work to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work." They just do that over and over. They make songs based on like video games and shit like that, and their songs are really, really catchy. So if you need something to like stimulate yourself, their music works really well.
Awesome.
Like they have a song for Cyberpunk that's done from the point of view of Arasaka that's called the Data Stream. And the whole song is about like Arasaka is like a knowingly evil corporation, and they're like, "You won't and can't do anything about it, so just keep buying our shit." It's a great song. They did one from the view of Mr. House from Fallout New Vegas. That was pretty good. They got some good stuff. You should check them out.
Yeah, I will do. Will
But
do.
the one that's been used in memes is called the Fine Print, and it was made from the Outer Worlds. Have you played the Outer Worlds?
No, I'm
So,
I don't really play games much.
okay, so in the Outer Worlds, you are like somebody who left Earth to go to the Halcyon system to like work for one of the corporations to try to make your living in a new frontier. But it turns out those corporations don't have any oversight. So, excuse me. So the board runs everything, and everywhere is company towns. It's all like very like I don't know if you know the history of company towns, but it's like we pay you in company script. You can spend it at our stores. Loyalty to the company is more important than loyalty to your family, and that's how it is. It's very like that. So the song, the reason why they say like we work to earn the right to work, to earn the right to work, to earn the right to give ourselves the right to buy, uh, ourselves the right to live, to earn the right to die. That's the chorus, and it feels very much like America, and it just sticks with me. But you should check them out for good. I won't pour over. But like one of the things that people don't realize that ADHD causes, weirdly enough, is verbal stims. And for me, for like most people, if you have like a song stuck in your head, it's a chunk of a song, right? For me, it'll be a word, and I'll just have to repeat that over and over and over again. Just like I have to, or it feels wrong. And if it's quiet, I'm doing it all day. And Annie used to get so fucking irritated with that, and I don't blame her. But now she's just kind of gotten used to it, so she'll go like, "Oh, are you like verbal stimming today?" And I'll say, "Yeah." And she'll just like, "Okay, I guess I'm wearing my headphones today." Because that's how she has to deal with it, because like telling me to stop won't do anything but make me feel bad, and she knows that, so she
Yeah.
doesn't even bother, because it's like something I have to do. It's like my rings. I do that all day. I clack my rings or I shake my hands. And I just do that while I'm at work, and people will get irritated, and I'll be like, "Hey, it's a disability. What are you gonna do? Like, get mad at me all you want. It's not gonna make me stop. I'm still gonna wear my rings. I'm still gonna clap them together. Deal with it." Because like I wear big rings. It's a third of a pound of steel and a good chunk of silver that I wear on my hand every day. Because it's nice and heavy, so when I do this, it feels like it moves itself. It's just something that feels nice. Like I click a lot. I click pens a lot. I need something that's like makes a lot of noise. It's very tactile. I'm an irritating person to be around a lot. Like when I make friends with people in person, I'll say like, "You're friends with me now, but like you might not be in a couple of weeks." And they'll go, "Why?" And I'll go like, "I'm a very abrasive person to be around. I never like you think that I'm talking a lot because we're new friends, and that's not why. I just don't stop. I talk in my fucking sleep. I do not stop. And I will argue with anything because I have oppositional defiance disorder, which means that I will argue and not even realize that I'm doing it until I've already started. So like I'm really fucking annoying to be around, and if we're not friends in a few weeks, it's no sweat. I understand. Trust me. And they go, "Oh, that's nuts." And then like 90% of them come to me and they're like, "Now I know why you said that." I'm like, "Hey, gotta cut ties, gotta cut ties." I understand. Because like I couldn't be friends with me because I know I'm really fucking irritating. But
I bet
hey,
you could be
that just
friends with
means
you.
people who can deal with it. No, I know people like me and they irritate the fuck out of me. I just know myself well enough. Like I can't be friends with people like me because I get annoyed because people like me like to constantly talk, which means that we eventually end up talking past each other because both of us need to talk. Like when you have ADHD, like when you have a thought come through your mind, like you might think it's rude if you hang out with somebody who's like that because they'll cut you off to say what's on their mind, but it's not. If I don't cut you off, I will forget what I wanted to say. And if you look at some of the debates I've done, you'll see where that happens. Where like I'll be in a panel and they'll go, "Hey," and they go, "Wait a second, let him talk." And then they get to me and I'm like, "Well, shit, I don't
I
know what I was
forgot.
gonna say now." Yeah, because I genuinely do. It's not like, "Oh, Strat, he debunked my theory before I could say it." It's just like, well, I don't remember. Like I keep trying to remember to have a pad with me so I can write everything down. But a lot of times I can't write fast enough to keep up with my brain. Annie's had to learn how to deal with that too. She'll be talking to me and I'll cut her off or something because it just jumps to my mind. And she'll like take a second and be like, "I was talking." And I go, "I know, I'm sorry. It's just she'll cut me off and be like, "I know, you had to say it because you forget, but it still bothers me." I'm like, "I'm sorry." We've been together five and a
Yeah,
half years, so she's clearly okay with it. But like, man, I know it gets really annoying.
there's this there's this idea that a lot of people have, and it's very popular, especially in America, and intuitively, it often to a lot of people it sounds inspirational, but it's
Mhm.
actually pretty toxic. It's like this idea that you aren't your disabilities. It's like you aren't your um,
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
that you can
A
like
lot of
pull
times with
yourself up.
ADHD, that takes the form of like ADHD is really a superpower if you can take over it. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
like depression doesn't have to define you. It's like, well, then you don't know what depression is. like, like it's I've always when people say that to me, I've always been like, look, I am as a person like defined in part by my disability and by my mental disorders, and that's okay. It's just a fact. It's not something you can just bootstrap your way out of. It's not something you can just overcome. It's something that takes a long time to deal with, and sometimes you just never can, and that's okay because you
It's
learn to cope with it. And
yeah,
and
it's
telling people like you aren't your disability, you can be normal is a really fucked up way to think about things.
yeah. This is my problem with stoicism, where it's like the whole idea that you can like you don't choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you react. Where it's like,
Yeah,
well, what how I react is what happens to me, right? It's like the
yeah,
my ability to like if I have severe depression, like my
I
reaction
have clinical depression.
is part of what happens to me. Yeah.
Yeah, Like a depressed person who's put in a dangerous situation will not respond the same way a normal, like a mentally healthy person would. Right? Like if somebody points a gun at somebody with clinical depression and they're in one of their lows, they might just kind of go like, "Go ahead and do it." And a person who's like neurotypical might just kind of go like, "No, please, I don't want to die." Like those things can definitely affect the way you respond to things. It's stoicism is sort of a strange half-baked ideology. It's like there's another one that comes to mind that a lot of people ascribe to themselves that just makes no sense. It's like anarcho-capitalism, like that makes no sense either. Like there's a bunch of those. Like Ayn Rand's philosophy as a whole.
Oh yeah,
It, oh my
objectivism.
God,
Yeah.
Ayn Rand. Yeah, she's not even really an objectivist, and if anything, her books are like the perfect anti-capitalist propaganda. Like for example, in Atlas Shrugged, CEOs are like the cream of the crop, the best people. They're like super powered, like heroes. But in order for that to happen, they have to have an impossible technology, which is a perpetual motion machine, to like save society. Like it's the Fountainhead's like that too. Like all of her books are just incoherent, and she has like a really weird kink for like CNC. And if she would have just come to terms with that while she was alive, her books probably could have been a lot better. Like, have you ever read Ayn Rand's books before?
It's been a while. I got into Ayn Rand in in high school. I was a libertarian in high school.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people did.
Yeah,
It seems like Ayn Rand or Fight Club. Those are the two where people end up in really weird political ideologies if they get introduced to them in high school. There's a quote about Ayn Rand's books. It says, "There are two books that can irrevocably change a young teenager's life. Uh, what was it? Atlas Shrugged and Lord of the Rings. One of them is a fanciful. What was it? It's a fanciful fantasy setting where all good is good and all bad is bad, or something like that. And it just lays out what sounds like Lord of the Rings, and then it goes. And of course, or no, it said it's a fanciful um, fantasy setting that can lead a teenager to be a stunted, politically incapable adult. And the other, of course, involves quirks. Like it's, I know a lot of
that's
people who were
awesome.
like, I'm reading Atlas Shrugged in high school, and then now they're like the weirdest people. They're like big
So
Ben Shapiro fans. They call themselves libertarians, but they don't know what libertarian means.
so Jeremy Gord has a comment here that I think is I actually didn't know was I actually didn't know about this, but I think it's really funny and it really shows like who Ayn Rand is. He says
Mhm.
she was also a severe drug addict who didn't believe addiction was possible to someone with the correct
Yeah.
ethics. Like that's
That is true.
so
She thought it was
funny.
a moral, ethical decision that you made. There was also a fun David Cross sketch that I remember where he said, Ayn Rand was a woman who was staunchly against social safety nets, welfare, and public housing, and she died on Social Security and public housing, which is what we in the biz call a real hypocritical bitch. Which, like, but the biggest, weirdest thing that always stood out to me in her books were the rape scenes. Like, there's always one, and it's always portrayed as, like, but I want him more now. And it's always so strange because like she clearly had a fetish for that, and if she would have just dealt with that in her personal life, maybe she could have been a better person. I don't know. I don't really judge people as long as they're not hurting people. But like, man, why is that in every book? Why?
Yeah,
Like in the Fountainhead, it's explicit, and the lady it happens to, like, it describes her fighting the guy off, scratching him up, getting punched in the face, and then he just leaves, and then she's like, and I think back to that now, and I just want it more. I want it again. He was like an animal, and I loved it, and I hate myself for loving it. It's like you have some real issues, lady, that you really need to look at before you start trying to critique other people's problems.
Yeah, but at the same time, she's so popular. Like people love Ayn Rand.
Well, she's popular with people who are like politically inefficient. But so is Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and people like that, right? They're easy gateways because they don't try to explain things in esoteric terms. So it seems like they sound smart and they make a lot of sense because it's really simple to grasp. But as it turns out, it's not always a good thing when something that complicated is simple to grasp.
I actually have a
That's part of
soft
the
spot.
problem for like, yeah.
I have a soft spot for Ben Shapiro. Not because I agree with him. I disagree with most of what he says, but
Mhm.
I see him. I view him as in a different category than like Steven Crowder. Like I see Ben Shapiro as like a genuine person who like actually believes what he believes. Whereas like Steven Crowder is just like this piece of shit who's just trying to make money.
Oh no, considering the recent revelations, I think Steven Crowder really does believe the shit he says.
Oh
Oh boy.
yeah,
Have
I
you
mean
heard
I
some
could
of
either
this?
way. Um,
Like the way he
about him
abused
like
his wife,
oh
the like
I saw
putting
the
his dick
video.
on his coworkers' shoulders and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, I
like
saw.
what kind of normal person says like watch it to their wife? Like watch it, I'll fuck you up. Like you don't talk like that to your wife, bro.
Yeah.
But
No,
like, did you
he's a
hear about what
scary
he was doing in
person.
the workplace?
Yeah, I did. I did.
He was
Yeah.
like pulling his dick out in front of random people, putting it on to people. And then recently, I don't know if you heard about this, he tried to make everybody who worked for him sign a contract with $100,000 penalty for them like talking to the press about stuff that
Oh,
happens at like Crowder HQ. And then
I did
almost
not hear
everybody
about that.
left.
That's so funny.
Almost everyone quit. And like the minute that he pulled out that contract to try to make him sign it, somebody leaked it to the press. It happened immediately. But like not gay Jared left like really early because Crowder was so fucking mean to him. And he's always been really mean spirited. Everybody who works for him is really depressed because he's an awful person. So like I don't know exactly how much of what Crowder says he actually believes in, but I think Crowder might be a neo-Nazi from the way he talks. Like I remember one of his episodes, he dressed up as like the stereotypical Chinese guy with the straw hat, and the big buck teeth, and little round glasses, and like fake drowned a girl baby doll for Halloween. Like he's just always been terrible. And Ben Shapiro, keep in mind, tried to hire him, and then he went on some crusade about how it was like a slave labor contract for $50 million because it essentially
Yep.
said like you can't be a horrifying racist because if you get banned on these platforms we won't make money off of you, so you can't get banned or you'll be penalized. And he's like, this is slave labor. God damn, I bet when show me a slave who was paid $50 million to
You're
just like
right.
sit on their ass all day, right?
Like,
Continue
my
doing what you
gosh.
already do. Here's $50 million for you.
Yeah, dude, I must be a slave at like 20 an hour.
I make
That's
eleven
crazy.
seventy. If that makes you a slave, what does that make me?
He's right.
I make eleven
Goodness.
seventy in Florida.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. Do you know what the average wage you need to make to afford a two-two in Florida is just for rent alone? It's like 31.72, and that's just for rent, not any other
Wow.
living expense. It's like $12 higher than it is in New York, I think, or it's no, it's $10 higher than it is in New York.
Oh, that's
That
crazy.
is nuts. And people still they move here and they're like, it's so cheap to live here. I'm like, where did you come from that you think it's cheap? We are the most expensive state to live in. It's insane. There are people making six figures annually that are like destitute in Florida right now. Miami's
Damn.
the most expensive city to live in the country, and Florida may have the worst housing economy like in the world, like housing market in the world right now. Like we're awful right now,
That would
and we're
explain
about
why
to
a
get a
lot of
lot
like
worse because
that would explain why like a lot of like these like real estate agent like guru type people live in Florida. Um so they can like
all
sell
you
the
got to do
really
is sell one house. It's 2.5 million, and you're set for a while.
yeah.
Yeah,
N-
But
Man,
like
my
in Florida, there's like no renters protections. There's like we're about to take a big financial hit because a lot of the tourist stuff that we rely on for money is not coming to Florida. Like a lot of conventions are going to like New Hampshire now, and they're not coming here, and that's gonna fuck us really bad. And it's because of the laws that DeSantis keeps pushing through that nobody actually wants. It's like when Rockville came to town a few months ago. Tool came on stage and Maynard James Keenan came out with a big set of fake tits and a dress and a wig. And the people who own the Daytona Speedway came to him and they were like, "We cannot put you on the screens because we might get the fucking speedway shut down because of the drag ban." And he just
oh
walked
man.
out in that dress and was like, "Fucking Florida, huh?" And the whole crowd was it was
That's
awesome.
awesome.
But they were really upset they couldn't see him on the screens. But like it was a genuine fear that this business could be shut down because of this iconic racetrack could be shut down because some guy wanted to wear a dress on stage. It's nuts. There's like AP psychology got banned earlier this month. AP psychology in college
Oh
because it,
wow.
it like leaned too heavily into black issues. You can't take African American studies. You can't take like AP sociological courses because Ron DeSantis thinks that it'll like make white people feel bad about our history. So like there's a lot of sociological courses that you cannot take anymore, which just sounds like oh boo-hoo sociology degrees. But what people don't realize is that our two biggest schools are known for their legal degrees. And those courses are integral to legal degrees. So anyone who comes to Florida for a law degree is going to be underserved compared to the rest of the states. 9 out of 10 students have either stated that they are will not be coming to Florida for their college courses, or at the very least that they're apprehensive about it. Like everything he does is really bad for our state. He's
Yeah, I'm
fighting
not.
Disney. Like, why would you
Yeah,
fight
it's
Disney?
so funny.
The
The
they
whole
are the second most litigious people on the planet, short of like Nintendo.
yeah, dude, the whole like conservative fight against Disney is so funny. It's one of the funniest things. It's
And
yeah.
what's funny is conservatives don't even like it because they like Disney too. Everybody likes fucking Disney.
Yep.
It's the most unpopular thing you could do. But they, what he did was he said he didn't want them to have a pride parade, and they were like, you know what? Fuck you. We're gonna have one early with fireworks. And they had the biggest pride parade they'd ever had. And he was like, that's a personal slight against me. So now I'm gonna sue them. And what he wanted to do was take away their special protections over the area that they own because they run their own like little city kind of. So what they did was all legally, all above board, they stripped the rights of the board in that area and gave it all back to Disney so that if Ron did take over that, he couldn't like build a prison right next to Disney like he wanted to and like rename the Disney parking lots after himself and his wife and just like totally kneecap Disney. And now he's trying to sue to say that that wasn't right. Even though they did it all legally and above board, they made it all very well known. It was publicized. He was just too dumb to keep up with it. Like he might be the first politician that I can say without a doubt like in our country in my time being involved in politics is a genuine fascist. Banning books, trans healthcare, trying to make it legal for doctors to discriminate based on anything, sex, race, religion, gender identity. He's trying to, like he said, he wants to make it so that so that soldiers with no teaching experience can teach in classrooms while they get their license because they have life experience that teachers can't impart on students. Like everything he does is awful.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not a fan of Ron the Sanctimonious. Not a
Yeah, Ron
fan.
DeSanctimonious. I like Meatball Ron. That was one of my favorite ones.
Meatball Ron. Yeah.
Rhonda, yeah, Meatball Ron. Because like that, for some reason, that's such a pertinent description of him, and I can't really pinpoint why. But like he's what's funny is he had a chance in the polls for president, and then he made one speech, and then he shot down to the bottom. Like he is a charisma black hole. He's
Oh,
just
absolutely.
devoid of charisma. Like I don't
The
know if you ever saw the video of him talking to a kid. This kid walks up with like a soda and he goes, "Oh, what you got there?" And the kid was like, "I have a crush," and he goes, "Looks like a lot of sugar." And then he just walked away because he's got this weird problem with sugar. I don't know what his deal is, but he always mentions it. Or like I think the video might be fake, but I choose to believe it's real. Where they sat food in front of me, he goes, hungry. For some reason, that feels like some real shit that he would do, and I just choose to believe that that video is real because it's hilarious to me.
What I think is
It's
funny is the
just
more he tries to
he's
be
so
charismatic,
gross.
the less charismatic he is.
Yeah, that's why I said he's a charisma black hole. The more effort gets put
Yeah.
into it, the more it just sucks it in. He sucks. God, he's awful. And I
I'm
know people like I had a guy come into my store once. He had a shirt on that said, "Don't tread on me, Ron DeSantis." And I thought that was a joke. I thought it was like, "Don't tread on me, Ron DeSantis." So I laughed at it. And that was the wrong answer because that dude looked at
Oh.
me across the counter and he goes, "What the fuck's so funny?" Like he was waiting all day for somebody to make a comment.
Oh
And
wow.
I
You're
was
like,
half
oh.
asleep, so I didn't catch myself. And I was like, your shirt says "Don't tread on me, Ron DeSantis," and I thought that was funny because that's all he does is trample on people's rights. And this dude started squaring his shoulders. He's turning all red, yelling and pacing back and forth in my store, going, "I'd be fucking killing teachers if I found out one of them told my son he should be a girl. If it wasn't for Ron DeSantis, I'd be in fucking prison." And I was like, "Hey, man, it kind of bothers me that you have children. Like, you need to leave my store immediately, or I'm going to call the police because you're making yourself a threat." He's like, "Oh, what? You can't handle this like a man?" I'm like, "Dude, I make less than $12 an hour. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to kick you the fuck out. Get out of my store, or I'm going to call the cops on you." And he just kept going. Just as he was walking out, red in the face. "Oh, this motherfucker! I'd be murdering teachers. Blah blah blah, killing gays. Blah blah." Walking down out the door, I could hear him, and the guy who was standing behind him was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "That what he just did." And I was like, "Look, man, I worked in bars where I had to toss bikers out. That guy doesn't bother me. It takes a lot to get under my skin." He goes, "Yeah, but that was scary." I was like, "For you, I have a counter in front of me and a locked door to my right. What was he going to do to me? Jump over the counter?" Like, whoa, I could outrun him, whatever.
He trips as he
But
tries to
like,
jump over.
that would have been the best. I would sell that camera footage. I would charge people to watch it because it would be that good to watch that dude like take his. He would. They always take the shirts off. Have him take his shirt off, try to hop the counter and catch his ankle on the way down, and knock himself out on the tiles. Oh, I can see it now because I still remember every bit of that guy's face. Like I can still remember exactly what he looked like because he was like really muscular, but he was fat in the face. I don't know how that played out, but like the dude was ripped, but in his face he had big double chin, and that fucked me up. So I just kept staring at his face while he was yelling at me, like, is he wearing a shape band that makes him look jacked, or is his face just unfortunate? That's all I could think while he was pacing. And then I remember I heard him say, like, if somebody told my son they should be a girl, I'd kill a teacher. And my first thought was like, man, you should not be allowed around your children. Like that's like if this is all it takes to send you flying off the handle like that, those kids are definitely getting beat. Like there's no way that guy is a level-headed parent. People don't act like that and go home and be normal. You know what I mean? Like that scared me more than anything was that he has children, young children. One of the
Yeah.
things he said, a part of the reason it bothered me was one of the things he said was if they tried to teach my son sex ed before he was in like high school, and I'm like, you know who else says that is like sex offenders. Like that was my thought because part of the reason you want to teach kids sex ed so young is so that they have the right terminology to turn in people who are abusing them. Because when we teach our kids about their genitals and whatnot, we use words for it, it's like your cookie, your flower, that weird shit. So when they report to the cops and they go, "He touched my cookie," they can go, "Oh, we have a cookie jar on top of the fridge. She's just so young, she doesn't know." So if you have the right terminology, it puts more people away. The vast majority of child abusers are their parents. So it doesn't seem right that a parent should be like, "I don't want my kid to learn how to make sure that people aren't abusing them." That's always a red flag to me. And that guy was just a mount. It wasn't even flags, it was tape, like just mountains of red tape. everything about him was just red flags galore. I just felt so bad. I hope those kids live with their mom and he lives alone. Like I really do, because that guy is. Oh, he'd be a horrifying parent.
Yeah, this
And I still remember that to this day.
man, this reminds me of like the earlier part of our conversation. It's just like this toxic idea of like, um, you are like you can handle your own struggles. Like, don't ask for help. Um, this
You're
whole
like,
idea
oh,
of
ask for help.
yeah,
There's a that's
yeah,
a thing that I like to do at my stores. Like if I can tell somebody's having a bad day, I'll be like, hey man, I've got time. Let's chat. And women are very comfortable talking to me about their problems because women are not taught that like it's not right to tell people about your issues. So like I guess word got around because now every woman in the city who's having like a really shitty relationship is talking to me about how they get away from it. But I don't mind that. I like helping people with that because like at the end of the day, if you get out of an abusive relationship, it's only up from there. But like I've only had a couple of dudes accept that, and as soon as they realize that I'm not going to mock them, it all comes out because they just expect it, right? Like one guy had a bad breakup and he was about my age and he was like, I'm just going through a rough time. I'm like, tell me about it. He goes, oh, I probably shouldn't, I shouldn't burden you with that. I'm like, no, tell me. I'm asking you to tell me. And he goes, okay, I had a bad breakup. And I was like, that really sucks. I know how that feels. And then I guess that was all it took to unlock the floodgates because he was there for 2 hours just pouring it out because he just didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody else. And I think that that's a really unfortunate thing, right? Like, I feel like the male suicide rate would be a lot lower if we would just instill in people that you can like talk about your problems, ask for help. It's fine. Like it's just it's sad to me every time that happens because like that guy could have gotten help a long time ago. He didn't have to wait for some rando at a gas station to ask him what his problem was.
yeah, absolutely. It's it's a shame that like society kind of puts men into these boxes of like you have to be stoic, you have to be strong, you have to
You always have to be
yeah,
the strongest one in the room for everyone else around you because you're a man. That's what men do. Yeah, well,
yeah,
men also shoot themselves because they don't talk to anybody about their problems. So I'll be a man,
yeah,
however, I feel like I'm a fucking man. But like I know a lot of people can't get past that, especially if you're raised by guys who are like that. It's really hard to get out of that pattern. But like I was raised by women, so like I was always very comfortable like crying or like telling people about my problems because one of the like part of the reason I'm so comfortable with that is when you're young and you take any kind of medication, one of the really common side effects is suicidal thoughts or depressive thoughts. So if I knew that I needed to talk about that if it came up, so my mom would know, so I could change my meds, and it made it easy to talk about other problems because that's something I was introduced to young. I wasn't raised by my dad, and if I was, I probably would have grown up to be a lot like him, which would be a very bad thing because my dad has been an alcoholic since he was 14. But he's also very like Trumpy, and he's big like real men don't cry. Like when I was 11, I was living with him, and we were like fucking around, play fighting. And I jumped off the couch with both my feet, and I was like kangaroo kick, and he grabbed my ankles, and then just like as a reflex, and then tossed me to the ground, and it knocked the wind out of my chest. And he didn't like, oh my god, are you okay? He just looked at me and he goes, "Don't play with the big dogs if you don't want to get hurt," or some dumb shit like that. As I was trying to catch my breath, and ever since that day, I never fucked around with him like that again because I was like, this doesn't feel safe anymore. And I don't think he ever realized that he did that because, like, you can't say that to a fucking 11-year-old. Don't play with the big dogs if you can't fight, if you can't take the fight.
yeah,
Like, come on, man. Like, he's a real, like, he's like a bar fight guy. You know what I mean? So, like, he would have very much been, don't talk about your feelings, deal with it on your own time. I probably would be dead by now if I was raised by him and all frank and being frank about it. So it's a good thing I wasn't, honestly. But like I know so many people who are raised that way, and I'm the only person they talk to because I'm the only one that will pry enough that they realize that it's okay to talk to me. And it's really sad because I'm like, you could talk to a therapist, and they're like, no. I don't need to tell anybody else about my problems. And I'll be like, dude, I'm not a therapist. I don't have the expertise to help you. You need to talk to somebody professional. And they just refuse to.
Yeah. Um, over the past like year or two, I've been like reflecting on some of like I guess quirks and things that I have, and a lot of it like gets tied back to just like how my parents raised me. Like, I mean, I had great parents. They raised me well, but like just one example is I'm I get very scared about talking about like my love life and like dates and hookups and things with my parents. Like that's a
Yeah.
common thing for a lot of people. But like
That's
I
a
don't.
very common thing in America. As it turns out, in a lot of places, people are way more sexually comfortable with their families.
Yeah.
We just, like, the way I like to put it is that, sexually speaking, America is like, maturity wise, we're like 12. Because if you go to like Amsterdam, there are ads on the sides of buses that just say like new tits, and it'll be ads for plastic surgery, and it'll just be a big set of uncensored tits with water on them. If you put that on a billboard in America, there would be a 40-car pileup the same day. Like, we're just not, we haven't allowed ourselves to mature well enough to talk about it.
Yeah. So like reflecting back, um, I'm uh, I'm like thinking of times where um like my dad used to do this thing where we were watching a movie. Whenever someone would kiss, he'd say, "Ew, Jerem, look away," and it's funny, right? And so I'd always do
Yeah.
that, right? And then it got to a point where like I thought I was supposed to, right? Like
Yeah, it's like one of those weird byproducts of that. Like, okay, this is what's normal.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
I like yeah, yeah. So then I think it's like just little things like that kind of bled into um me just like I, I don't talk. Yeah, I'm the guy that doesn't talk about that stuff. I avoid that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
and
me, like, guys will like test the boundaries with me, and there will always inevitably be a moment where they like come to me with like a weird sexual question, not like a proposition, but like I was hanging out with this kid who was a lot younger than me. Like, he was like 19. I was trying to help him get on a better path because he was doing a lot of really stupid shit. And eventually he was like, I have a question about like sex because I'm not like super confident. I was like, shoot. And he said like, how big is a big dick? I was like, okay, that was a weird question, but we can get into that. And I was like, you need to understand that the average is a lot smaller than you think it is because you've been watching porn your whole life and it makes
oh
you
for
think
sure.
it's big and it's not. Because it American porn is the only porn that does this, but they hire dudes with like insane, painfully large dicks, and the average is like 5.5 inches. So like I explained that to him, and then after he realized that I was comfortable talking about that, every time he had one of those questions, he would come and talk to me about it. And I'm fine with that. I'm very open with that because I think that it's important to have people you can talk to in confidence about stuff like that because, especially when you're 19, who are you going to ask? Your dad? Yeah, it's going to go over well. So he would talk to me about it because I have a lot more experience. I've been with this girl for 5.5 years. She's not the only person I've been with. And he knows that. So he knows that he can come and ask me questions. But like, it always comes to that type of question. And then all of a sudden, I'm inundated with information I didn't need. Like, when I was in school, I was every girl's big brother, right? So, like, because they all thought I was gay when they met me. So I knew things about those girls and their habits that no one ever knew because they're just way too comfortable with it. And I feel like you should be comfortable to an extent with that type of stuff. And we just aren't as a people. So I try to foster that in people. Like, make sure it's appropriate, but like, talk to people, ask questions. Don't Google things because Googling things will only make it worse. It's like whenever you have like a pain in your elbow and you Google it, you think you have cancer because WebMD says so. It's like you shouldn't
Yeah.
ever Google shit like that.
Yeah,
I
we should be
ramble a lot.
really
You know this.
we should be really open and genuine with each other and be real. Don't avoid conversations. Yeah.
It's like one of the things. Part of the reason I do that is because like male friendships, especially in America, are not healthy. It's very. I'll just punch him in the arm and tell him he'll be okay and he'll be fine. And that's not how people work when there's problems. But like our like male relationships aren't healthy. They're just not. Like the way that we form friendships and the way that we deal with our friend groups, it's very like poke and prod, right? Like when two women see each other, that they're and their friends, like, oh my God, you look so pretty. When two dudes see each other that know each other, they're like, oh, what's up, you fat son of a bitch? Oh, looks like you're getting a little bald there, Jim. Like it's a weird dynamic that we engage in. It's like performative masculinity that at the end of the day ends up being a really toxic influence on our lives. And I try to promote within my own friend groups away from that and be like, you can be vulnerable. You can be like a human being. You don't need to play up this bit that you're not really part of. Just be you. And that's such an alien concept to a lot of people, especially men, because of the way we're raised, that like just being you is like scary for a lot of people. And I really wish that would change because it makes for really awkward friendships when people are so closed off like that.
Yeah, I think that's why people like to drink together so much because it like helps them bring out their actual.
It weakens your inhibitions.
Yeah. Well, I actually think so we're coming up on 2 hours here, so might cut
Yeah.
it off. Um,
Okay.
but it's been a good chat. I think we covered
This
a
is
lot. Do you have
this
any like?
just so you know, like this is how like real conversations in real life go with me. I go on 9 or 10 different topics if I don't have one to keep me on. That's just part of the reason people have a hard time talking to me.
No, I
But
like it
what
because
were you saying?
I can just say like one or two things and then you go on and I can just sit
That,
back and listen. I don't have to like.
that's my favorite thing to do. What's funny is I hate
Hey,
the sound of my own voice, but I love to chat.
I think like have you done a lot of recording like aside from like the past year?
I mean, when I was a KJ, I used to sing and they would record that, but I never really listened to it back.
Because I
Like a
used
lot of times
to.
when you do karaoke, they'll point a speaker at you so you can hear your own voice, and I always told them to
Yeah.
turn that off because I hate the way I sound.
I used to hate my own voice, and from like the age of like 13 until now, I've pretty much recorded my voice multiple times every single day, whether it was like making music or like making sketch comedy or like doing these podcasts. Um, to the point now where I
Like
actually enjoy
yeah,
the sound of my voice.
when
It
I
doesn't annoy
talk
me.
and I
Yeah.
hear myself, I like the way my voice sounds to me. I don't like how my real voice sounds. Because you know, when you hear your own voice, it's a little lower. It sounds different. So when you hear your own voice, it can change depending on how it's recorded and things like that. So I really hate the way my voice sounds to other people, but I like the way my voice sounds like in my own head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's common for a lot of
Like
people.
for me, it sounds a lot deeper. It sounds more authoritative. It sounds more confident in a weird way than my recorded voice does. So I don't usually listen to my stuff back unless it's like I'm taking notes about things I think I could do better in a debate, and then I just take that nails on a chalkboard and I just deal with it so I can try to better my arguments.
Yeah. The a problem I have is I say too much. I get really annoyed of all my ums.
That that is a thing that I used to do a lot, and it's something you have to teach yourself. So like so your brain, the reason that your brain uses the reason you do that is because your brain is trying to catch up. It's trying to fill in a space where you don't have anything to say for a moment because you are trying to keep up. And that's why I pause when I talk or I draw words out because when you say it tends to, like psychologically speaking, it tends to make people think that you aren't as intelligent as you are, or they think that you are more let's see, like you're more you're not as confident in what you're saying as you might actually be. So I either stop a word short or I drag it out so that I can try to change the pitch or figure out what I'm going to say, put my words in line without saying a lot. Because I used to say constantly because my brain moves so fast that I have to do that to kind of keep things moving. It's if you practice in your own time, like just while you're talking to yourself or using your inner monologue and you practice stopping yourself when you say you can work yourself out of that. It's kind of like voice training. It takes a
Yeah.
little while, but once you get done with it, it feels really good.
I know I took a public speaking class, and whenever I would give a speech, the ums would kind of disappear, the ums and the legs. And but I also practiced my speeches, right? So
Hmm. That's because your brain wasn't trying to fill in empty space while you were coming up with an original thought. You were just repeating things.
yeah.
Like if I write up a script, I won't even pause on my words because I have something to read from. But if I don't, I have to pause or I'll because like my pauses are long. So sometimes my brain, I would just say a whole bunch of times before I can catch up on my track, and it sounds really bad. I don't really notice it when you do it, to your credit. So you don't do it as often as I used to. But like if you are self-conscious about that, there are ways to train yourself out of it. The way that worked for me was just I talk out loud to myself. So when I do that, I will cater the way I talk so that I can try to enforce better speaking patterns in myself. I did that when I was in school because a teacher of mine, um, I had a reading teacher who would say between almost every word when he would read out loud, and it annoyed me so much that I told my mom about it, and she goes, "You do that too." And I realized that that thing that irritated me so much was something that I did. So just because I realized it and I started to notice it, I started to try to train myself out of it. Now I'm somewhat tired, so it's kind of hard to keep myself from doing it right now because it is a conscious effort. But it's something that I've worked on for a long time.
Yeah, something I do
But
like a dweeb, someone who likes to talk is I'll do talks in my car. Like I'll talk to myself about different topics. Like I will pretend like I'm in an argument
Mhm.
uh with someone else about some topic, or I'm giving some speech or I'm giving some lecture, just driving in my
I do
car
that
in
too.
traffic. Yeah.
I do that
Or
when
in the
I'm riding my
shower.
bike to work, or like my if my store is just empty because there's usually 2 or 3 hours where nobody comes in because I work the night shift. I'll just do that while I'm walking around if I can't find a YouTube video to listen to. I'll come up with hypothetical arguments and then argue both sides of them in my head, and I'll just do it out loud so that when people walk in, it looks like I'm insane. But
Yep.
I work overnight. People assume overnight people are crazy anyway, so it doesn't really affect me too much.
All right. It's been a good chat. I should mention that
Yeah.
um there's a there's a chat going on with Reasonable Vegan. Uh
Yeah.
let's see, what was it about? Oh, about um government and anarcho-capitalism. Um
Anarcho-capitalism is such a
yeah.
fucking oh
Yeah, so that'll be a fun one. So it's happening right now. I think so. That's what Jeremy left for. Um
yeah.
but yeah, so
Let's
I'd
see.
yeah, I'll probably check it out for a little bit, and I'd recommend you do as well.
I might. I'm probably gonna go in the room and like talk with Annie for a little bit while she's playing Minecraft. I'll probably fall asleep, but if I'm still up, I'll check it out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. And you can always rewatch it as well.
Yeah, that's true. Anarcho-capitalism has always been a really funny ideology to me because it just makes no sense. It's like, well, we should take away the government and the corporations will just do the right thing. It's like, no, they won't. We already know what company towns are like. It would
Yep.
just be corporate. It would be cyberpunk without all the fun bits. That's all it would be.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I'll
All
see you
right.
around, man.
Yep.